Welcome to the Racing Nuggets podcast. I'm PJ Noodleman, joined by my co-host from the Midwest Racing Connection, Dan Plan. Hey, Dan.
Hello, good to be here again.
That is a fine shirt you're wearing. I have the same one myself from the World Series of Asphalt.
Yeah, I think it's a couple years old at this point, but it's still not quite warm in my basement yet.
Ah, okay. Well, I have a feeling our guest on this episode has been to the World Series of Asphalt and many other races, obviously, too. Mr. Rich Bickle Jr. Welcome to the Racing Nuggets podcast.
Glad to be invited.
Well, we are so excited to ask you a bunch of questions, obviously. I'm just going to dive right in, Dan, unless you wanted to start. I feel like I always talk too much, so I should let you have a shot first.
I'll start. Yeah, I guess I've read the book on you and stuff and followed your career through Checkered Flag Racing News and stuff like that. But what was your first race car back in the day?
Well, like the book said, a family in the subdivision we lived in, the dad took off on the wife and the three sons with another woman to Colorado. So me and the oldest son went up to the barn and stole his car to the garage. And we come down to the front yard and we painted it like my dad's car, yellow number 5. And I went to Jefferson and I led the first 6 laps of the heat race. And Denny Bant Jr. got underneath me off of turn 2 and got loose and hit me in the door. And I went off the back straightaway and into the cornfield and bent the car in half, broke the roll cage off. So it didn't last very long, but that was my first shot.
Pretty exciting opening act there for sure.
Well, you got to start somewhere. And I guess, you look back at things and say, well, my first race, I ended up in the cornfield. Not many people could say that.
True.
There's truth on that. So, did your dad support you wanting to race? I mean, was he all about that, or was he maybe not like, yeah, you don't really want to go down that path?
No, he was actually, how do you want to say this? He was behind me, but until I really showed that I wanted to do it, I remember in 1971, he got the first wire field, or 72, first wire feed welder. And I was 11 years old. And I said, well, how does this work? He goes, I'll show you one time. And he showed me, he goes, no, there's a pile of scrap over there in the corner, figure it out yourself. And that's kind of the way he was. He would give you a little bit of info until he showed that you were interested. And then after that, I started building my own bodies, because I worked at Dorsey Trailer and I got the end rolls aluminum, and I built bodies for quite a while from the old 5-star patterns and just to keep surviving. And I built, his body for his race cars, and and he built my motors. And, it's kind of one of the things that after I showed that I had initiative, that he was there full time.
Cool. That's very cool. You kind of have been, and maybe the right word here is a scrapper. You have done things on shoestring budgets. You have stretched a dollar, and a lot of it was relationships. Am I right to say that? You just really developed great relationships with people to help keep your program rolling.
Well, it's amazing. You look back at it and you go, man, how did it happen? You just go, man, it's like, I didn't have $5. And my mom, she worked double shifts at Dana Corporation, and she was at the racetrack. She was more of a racer than me and my dad were, which is kind of crazy to think about. She drove some powder puffs back in the day, but she was, as far as a racer, she was the racer. But you just worked and worked and worked. You worked hard. I grew up, my grandpa had a machine shop in his basement, and I sharpened drill bits for him. He used to go to Morgan Corp in Janesville and get 5 gallons at a time. And I would sharpen drill bits. And I learned how to run his mill and his lathe. And I was, 9, 10, 11 years old. And, so back then, you learned how to do things, and that's kind of what was cool. And he's the one that bought me the edge roller to build the bodies, to make the lip on the fenders and the doors and the quarters. So it just, it all kind of worked together. And it was just, you look back and it's amazing time. And in the story about my first sponsor, Rockford Speedway in 1980, I went there with my Rockford Rules car to run the Arco race. Well, I ended up winning the semi-feature against John Spear from Janesville. And my car handled really good, but I had a cast iron exhaust and a Rockford Rules motor. And a guy came out of the stands and said, man, your car goes around the corner really good, but you have no power. He goes, what do you need? I said, well, I really need a set of headers. And he goes, well, how much are they? I said, I don't know. I'll go over and ask Joe Shear. I know he's got a bunch of used stuff. And I walked over to Joe and I said, you got any headers for a small block? He goes, yeah. I said, how much? $100. So I walked over and went over to the guy and I said, what's $100? So that ended up being my first sponsor was Gene Ruckey from Blackhawk Fire Protection. And that's how it started. You know, a guy come on the stands and asked me.
That's cool. That's really cool. And then you mentioned Joe Shear. I mean, you are one of the lucky ones that really got to grow in racing during the heyday of the good times, right?
Oh.
I mean, you got to race against so many people that everybody just holds in such high esteem. That has to be kind of cool to know that you've cultivated those memories.
Well, it's you look back at it and you go, wow, you know, where did 45 years go, first of all? And then you go, my God. One of the great stories is 1983, Mike Chase come here from California because Bach, Reffner, and Deachens went out west in 80 and 81 and just waxed them. And so Mike come here in 83 and he ran 5 nights a week. And he had big money from California. I mean, he come here and he thought he was going to be somebody. And he got here. He never made a feature till mid-season at Madison. And he finished 17th. He worked for me in a Bush deal in 2000. And he goes, he knew that Trickle and Shear were back here when he got here. He goes, there's 40 more you guys were back here that nobody ever heard of that were unbelievable. And I've always said the 50 greatest short track asphalt racers in the day, 40 of them from, you know, here, Northern Illinois, Michigan, you know, Northern Indiana, Ohio. I mean, the Midwest was that. I mean, why do you think Rusty Wallace, Mark Martin, to learn how to race?
Yeah.
This was it. I mean, this was, I mean, and to do it with them. And what's cool about it was them guys would tell you how to make your car better. Now, I didn't interact with Joe a whole lot. He was really quiet. But Dick was like an open book. Me and Tom never got along too well. But, you know, a lot of the guys would just, you know, they'd tell you anything you need to know to make you faster. I mean, that's unheard of nowadays. I mean, now everybody has, you know, shock covers on and, you know, nobody talks and has fun no more. Nobody goes to the bar and drinks a beer, and it's just a different world.
It is a little bit different.
When you were transitioning from the Rockford rules stuff to the late models, as a racer, did you think, yeah, I can run with these guys, I just need the equipment? Or, I mean, with the experience when those guys had when you were getting into it, were you, unlike a racer and somewhat realistic, going, I need to do this a little while before I can run with Trickle and Reffner and Shear and Deachens and all those guys?
I don't think I looked at it that way. So that in 1980, I won Rookie of the Year at Rockford in Lake Geneva, and I won 23 semi-features that year. I was a semi-feature king everywhere else. I mean, I won, didn't win a feature at Rockford, Lake Geneva, but that propelled me into saying, well, keep working, keep digging. And so what the crazy story is in my life, in 1981 was a rough year for me. I think I finished 5th at Madison. You got to run the top 5 to claim a motor. Well, Shear won, and I claimed his motor. I borrowed and stole money from all my friends and my buddy from the Red Baron Cap in Edgerton. I come up with $5,000 to claim Shear's motor. Well, Fred Nielsen told me to go get bent, and they wouldn't give me the motor. Well, Larry Dejan finished 2nd that night, which is unusual in 81 because he won everything there was. Well, I got Larry goes, well, I'll give you my drain motor. Maybe it was 3,500. I think it was 3,500. Anyway, he gave me his motor. And the night I won my first ever late model feature at Lake Geneva in 81 is the night he got killed at Kakana. And it's just, I remember getting home at 5 in the morning and my dad wake me up at 6 in the morning and go, hey, we got something to tell you. And he told me that story, and that's something that sticks with you for a long time. And then another story in 81 too was really hard on me was we partied with Pat Shower at Winchester, and we're sitting in the stands. I think there's like 11 laps to go. And I walked underneath the grandstands to go across the underneath the racetrack, going to pits and congratulate him. He's running 2nd. And I heard a kaboom like you've never heard. And I ran to the wall, and he was sitting right in front of me. And Terry Seneca hit him off of turn 4 and he hit the inside wall. And the car bounced up against the wall and the car ripped in half. And so 1981 was a rough year for me, as far as, you know, losing friends. Not they weren't great friends, but they were racers that were, you know, really, you know, Larry was on top of the world, and Pat was really coming into his own, and to have them two experiences was, you know, I guess it was a growing phase for me, and you know, it made you look at life a little different, and but it's kind of odd to have them two things happen to you.
Talk a little bit about how you did look at life differently after both of those incidences in 81. I mean, that had to have kind of changed. You probably had to work hard on your mindset every time you got back in the car, right?
Actually, it's the opposite. You know, with Larry, you know, Larry's deal, his motor in the car when I won my first race, I wanted to win more, because it was like, you know, maybe carrying the tradition for him. Pat's deal was, I mean, we partied with him in the parking lot that night before the race, you know, and just, it just had to have it happen. And just, you know, to be in that position, to be there, the first guy at the fence, and then the deal with Larry, it's kind of ironic, but it makes you grow, makes you work harder, and, you know, carry the tradition on. And I, you know, think we did.
Yeah. Yeah, you did. You've had a lot of success in your career, and you've actually had, you talked about, you know, your first major sponsor like that with those headers, but you've actually had some really great partnerships that you've developed too with different sponsors that have really helped elevate your game too. Anyone in particular that just really stands out for you as having been just a fantastic partner that really helped you out throughout your career?
Well, there's quite a few. I mean, in the early days, Joe Shear was driving for the Patch Brothers, and I don't know what happened, because, like I said, you know, Joe didn't talk a lot. Joe was really quiet, and just he didn't go to the bars and drink beer and race hell like everybody did. You know, he just was to himself. But anyway, when they split, they walked up to me and said, "Hey, you know, we want to put our name in your car, and here's the Cube Man and the open trailer." And, you know, they give me pretty much everything he left at the shop. And that was 1985, I believe. And it's kind of like, they gave me that deal, but I was broke. I was dead nuts broke. I won the championship Slinger in 83, because I basically only ran there. And 84, I had nothing but problems all year. I mean, broke motors and broke motors and broke motors, and I had nothing left. So I remember going up to Wagner's, because Carl Wagner approached me at the bar, and you know, he was like a monster. I mean, I'm a big guy, but Carl was, you know, not my height, but he was a big man. Yeah, his hands were twice the size of most people's. And he said to me, he said, you know, if you need a motor, come talk to me. Yeah, okay. So anyway, it was probably about 3 weeks before the season started in 85. And I said, well, I got a bunch of blowed up crap, oil pumps, junk. I have no money. And I drove up there, and I gave him a basket of junk parts. And I remember he looked at the oil pump and he goes, "What war did this thing go through?" And I said, I might have some money for you by mid-season. And I'm walking out the door, and he goes, "Back up to the door." I go, "What?" He goes, "Back up to the door." I go, "What door?" "Back up to the goddamn door." And I have no idea what door he's talking about. It's the first time ever at the shop. I'm scared of the guy. So I back up the door, and he opens up the back door and has a motor on the hoist. And he said, "Here, when I get your motor done, you better get this thing out here and out of the car and back up here within an hour." And I'm like, I don't even know this man. I barely know. I know who he is. Anyway, it was Mike Miller short block with Dennis Lampman's heads. Wow. And it won the back of my truck. And I won the championship at Madison that year, won Wisconsin Driver of the Year. And I remember he got my motor done. And he called me up and goes, "Get my motor back up here." I go, "No, this thing rips." He goes, you have about an hour to get the motor up here, or I'm going to come down to Edgeard and I'm going to make sure that you're not breathing. And I'm like going, "Oh my God, this thing is so good." Well, anyway, the motor I got from him, I actually built for me, was even better. So, you know, you just look at things and laugh. And that was, there's 3 people that saved my life in racing. That was the first one. And then Wayne Lensing from Left Hander in '89. I sold my first late, or my '88 car to Matt Kensa, this first late model. And I was done. I was broke. I had the Miller deal for 2 years. I got like $4,000 a year from the distributors. And although old beer, I could go down and get it at the, brewery, not the brewery, but the distributorship. Well, I mean, I'd go down and get 600 cases of beer. I had a lot of free help on, Mondays and Wednesdays when we weren't racing, but I was broke. And I sold him the car and I had nothing left except the motor. And Wayne called me, I think it was a Monday night or Tuesday night. I think it was Tuesday night. And he goes, get down here and put a car together. I go, Wayne, I'm broke. I have no money. I was supposed to get the big money from Miller. That's when Bobby Ellison got hurt. Trickle got the deal and got the big money for the short track program. I was supposed to get like 50 grand. Well, 50 grand back then would have been like 5 million to me. So anyway, I was done. Wayne goes, get your butt down here and put a car together. So on Wednesday morning, me and Phil Hammer, my crew chief, drove down to Rockford. I went in the shop and welded the chassis together. Phil went in the parts room and they started putting wrenches together with Bobby Wilberg and all these guys, and they got it all. We got back to my shop Wednesday night and we started putting the car together. I never went to bed, and I hung the body, put the interior in the car, plumbed it. We took off for Concord Friday afternoon. We got to Concord Speedway Saturday morning. Think of this. Now, most people can't build a car in a month with a lot of help. It wasn't painted. It was a white body. I had some old numbers from the decal thing. I went and sat on the pole at Concord and won 10 grand. That kept me going.
Wow. Well, that was two. So who was the third one that saved your career?
Bob and Terry Newton from Hoosier Tire. Same deal. Even though we're running up front, I had no money. Clincher gear, come on, a little bit of money. The patch deal kind of went away because they weren't going to spend any money. And it was just, I had nothing left. And so Terry Newton comes up and goes, hey, would you test tires for us? Well, I can't afford the race fuel, well, we'll do this. Well, so for doing that for him, I got tires for a year, and that propelled me into 1990. And then 1990 was magic. I don't care where we went, we won. It was just, it's one of them years that, I look back at Tom and Dick winning the 67 features. I got to run the ARC race at Daytona, ran the Daytona 500. And I think we ran 130 some short track races. And I know I won over 80. I never counted, but we pulled in the pits and we won. I remember the end of the year, we won 13 to 15 biggest end of the year short track racemen up north and down south. And we pulled into Pensacola and everybody's practicing all day long on Thursday. And Phil goes, want to go make some laps? I go, for what? That's how confident it was. And we sat around all day and we didn't practice. And Phil goes, just go out and make some laps. So we probably had some 20 lap tires. I went out and I was like 2/10 faster in the field, and them guys put tires on. I'll never forget. Jody Ridley walked over to me and said, isn't it time for you to go home? And I said, Jody, when I leave here Sunday with a check, I'm going to go home. So I'll never forget, drive the Cube Band, Cheers Cube Band, the Patch Brothers Cube Band down Pit Road. I had the check out the window, waving it to him. I said, I'll see you next year. And them guys were just shaking their heads. Well, 2 years ago, we were down there, and him and his son come in the hauler, and we got talking about that. And he's like, he said, sometimes people get on a different planet. And he said, that year was your year. And that's what's propelled me to get the cup ride and all that stuff. But anyway, 1990 was magic. It was just.
Let's talk a little bit more about 1990. So what was different that year that really was the game changer for you?
Well, 87, we really started really running good. And 88, we changed, 5-star wanted to give me a body. And I put the Pontiac Grand Prix body on. And the car was just sideways loose all the time. Well, we weren't smart enough to know about aero. So I remember I won my first article feature at Ileana, and Dick got underneath me off of turn 2 on the last lap, and I run him in the infield, and he wasn't really happy with me that night. But I said, I can't lose again. But we didn't realize what Arrow was. So anyway, we switched in 89 back to Camaro body, and the car just, when we built that new car, it was just like automatic again. And 89 was a great year. I mean, we won a lot of races. I mean, we won. Well, here's a crazy story. So in 89, I started going down to do the Big Ten deal at Concord. Well, I decided, like, I think it was after the third race, we come back and run Slinger for the opener. And I don't remember to this day, I don't remember who said this. Why are you coming back here and racing us? I'm like going, what? Well, why do you drive all the way back here and race us? Well, it pissed me off. And I said, well, I'm coming back here every night. So 7 times we come back through the season. So I won the Big Ten championship at Concord and won the Slinger championship. And I mean, that's a lot of driving. I remember getting a hauler and start driving from Concord. I get to Knoxville and somebody else get in the seat and drive the next couple 3 hours, and off we go in Kenny Baber's bus. And but 89 was a great year. We won a ton of races, and almost won my first snowball derby in 89. I passed Crawford to lead with like 2 to go, and the yellow come out, and he got back in front of me, and I missed by about 3 foot at the line. And but 89 was a great year, but 90 was just magical.
That's awesome.
What year did you have? I remember one of my favorite Rich Bickle cars was the Ford Probe. And I think it was that Slinger. Everybody was bitching about the body. I remember you came back with a Thunderbird body on it. In the back of it, it said probe this.
No, that was on the windshield.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I, there was no body rules, and I put that pro body on. And I mean, that, even though I did the cup deal, even 91, 92, 93, what through the 90s, I mean, if we showed up, we're going to win. I mean, I took that car and put the Dodge body at 96 in the Dodge motor. I ran 14 races with it. I went the Slinger Nationals, won the Snowball Derby. We won all 14 races of that car. I still got the car. It's the only short track car in history that's won $1 million. And I've been trying to find a Thunderbird body put back on it to make it back in the original car we built at the terminal. But we built that probe, and I come up and run, I think, 3 races up here with it, and everybody was just bitching. So I left the car up here at Kevin Lash, the Pathfinder. I said, you put a Thunderbird body in this car, you make it bone stock as you can make it. And so I set a track record with the car at the Dells with the probe. I won the Dells, won Madison, won Slinger. And so Kevin put the body on it. We went back up, and I beat my track record with the car at the Dells with the stock Thunderbird body on, with the probe this on it, on the windshield. And nobody said no more. That was it. That was the end of the whole conversation. But you look back the Dell story for me. I won in 98 or 89. I won both by now, but fell 55s that night. I raced there 14 times from then till 2012. I never lost. So you're talking a 23-year span. They only raced there 14 times, never lost. That's another thing that you look back at things that you go, man, that's just amazing. And then to win the Sauter race, 2 years ago at the end of my career, that was pretty cool.
Let's briefly touch on the end of your career. Is it really over, or are you going to ever get back behind the wheel again? I've never known you to say never.
Well, I've kind of retired a couple of times. I keep doing it, but I told people, I said I wouldn't quit if I come up with a major sponsor, won the lottery, but it costs so much money to do it. And I've got other, adventures I'm working on in Costa Rica and things like that. Do I miss it? Every day. I mean, I still feel like I can get the car like win tomorrow, even though I'm going to be 62 next week. I still feel like every day that I still think I can win every race I get in the car. Yeah. You have to have that. You have to have that mentality. If you don't, you shouldn't be doing it. Agreed,
100%. So there's a chance, basically, is what you're saying.
Well, I have a bet with Fredrickson. He give me 2 years, and I said, well, I'm not doing it, and he bet me $1,000. But so my friend that bought the Trickle old car, wants me to run the car at Rockford. So I'm not sure that's considered racing. You know, so
I don't think that counts. That's
you know, but I mean, because I mean, this the last year being at Rockford, I mean, that's to me was my playground, my home. I grew up, my dad there as a kid. Kind of sad deal, but I'd like to at least do that.
I kind of wondered if Rockford wouldn't be the reason why you would come out of retirement. I can't imagine them dropping the checkered flag on this final lap season without you running in something there.
Well, I don't know if I'm going to do it. I mean, I'm not sure where, you know, what's going to happen there, but I told Sue, I said, when the last race is over, I'll be there and we're going to go sit underneath turn 1 and 2 wall and drink beer until the sun comes up, because that was my first ever rock and roll concert, was in 1976 at Rockford Speedway. I mean, Ted Nugent was a headliner with like 12 bands, and there was probably 40,000 people there. It was crazy. And so that place, I mean, growing up there as a kid, it was just, you know, the rest of the racetracks were racetracks. This was like Disneyland, you know, the stuff they had there and the things we did. And I mean, I won a bowling ball throw, a bicycle race, a change grab, a demolition derby, whatever Rockford Speedway had as a kid or growing up, I won. And we're going back to 89. I could never win the damn short track race. I mean, it's just like every year. I mean, I remember in 88, we had him just killed and I got wrecked at the end. And I mean, just every time I should have won it 3 or 4 times until then. So I remember we finally won in 89. Mike Garvey was up my butt for the last 20 laps and it was a heck of a race. And I got out and I went over to the side of the racetrack against the infield and I took a bite out of the track and I chewed it and I spit it out and it tasted like, but you know what? That place bit me so many times, I finally bit it back.
Well, I hope we get to see you at Rockford. It would be a shame to not see you etch your name in the record book one more time there.
You know, the only thing I haven't won there is the bullet. That's, you know, I mean, it's kind of funny. You look back at it, it's like, how did that never happen? To me, one of the greatest trophies in history, and never won that one, but it is what it is.
What is the best trophy that you have, you think, or your biggest win that you just are really, that you hold up as the best of them all?
Boy, how do you say that? You know, I mean, you know, after winning 500 races, you know, well, this flag sitting over my corner or shoulder. I was racing outlaw sleds and building them for quite a few years, and my buddy called me up my last year race, and he goes, "Come up and drive my sled." And I went up the Eagle River and won the world championship, and I haven't sat one in 9 years. And I'll never forget the kid that I didn't even know who I was racing against. I mean, except Joe Snyder and a couple of guys, but there's a bunch of guys I never knew because I was gone for 9 years. And the kid that I passed the lead, he come up to me in after race, and I didn't know who it was. And he's like, "How old are you?" I go, 59. He goes, "I drove into turn 3 till I saw God." He said, "You passed me on the outside." And he said, "I thought your throttle stuck and it turned." He goes, "I pray to God at 59 to have the balls that size." Can I talk like that on there?
Absolutely. That's all right.
You know, but it's just funny. I mean, and then another guy walks up to me and goes, "I want you to drive my dirt car at Bristol." I've never sat in a dirt car. I don't like dirt racing. It's not my gig. And I'm like, "What?" I go, "Well, maybe if we can go somewhere and test." He goes, "No, there's no test." He said, "You have to come drive my car at Bristol." I'm like, "I'm not going to go drive a dirt car at Bristol. I never sat in one, you know." But he said, "Well, if you can drive that thing like you did, you can drive my dirt car." And he's from Iowa, and I don't even know who the guy was, but it's kind of funny how things happen. But as far as trophies, man, that's just maybe the $100,000 trophy at the Derby, after not being able to get it for 4 hours after the race. But I don't know, there's so many.
Did they always do the colonoscopy at the end of that race for the race cars, or is that just modern day?
Well, it wasn't that. Bobby Gill's wife cheated in the scoring stand. My mom caught her.
Oh,
And I lapped him, and they said he won the race. I was going to lap him for the second time. And it took forever to get, you know, it paid $100,000 bonus besides the, whatever, all the bonus money, like 47 more thousand. And we sat around till like 2 a.m. before they finally walked over and gave me the trophy. And we have a picture of it, and there was nobody left. The place is empty, and it's just sad to win the 5th one there and not to get to celebrate it. And after that, I mean, there was nobody in the same zip code. It just is what it is. It's sad that I never really got along with him too well, even though we were teammates at Terminal for a while. But then to have his wife pull that. But what's really cool about it is my mom caught her. That's how much a racer my mom was.
That's awesome. That is really awesome. We you're kind. Go ahead, Dan. I'm sorry.
When you were getting your start in the going from the Rockford rules to the late models, was your dad still running at that point, or had he stepped aside?
No, he raced until probably 80. He ran for 33 years, so he probably ran until late 80s. So there's another 8 or 7 or 8, 9 years.
Did he ever tell you how proud he was of you?
No.
No.
He's pretty quiet.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, once in a great while he'll throw something out there, but I don't know. It's just kind of funny. Like I said, he showed me one time how to do anything. That was it. So he's pretty close to the vest and everything, but I know it.
Yeah.
I mean, it ain't like, we see him today. I mean, he's doing good. I mean, he's 83 years old and he's still building flathead motors and enjoying himself.
Does he hug you? Is he a hugger?
No, not a hugger.
I am. I hug everybody. I was going to ask you that you kind of have a bit of a reputation as the bad boy. And a part of that might also stem from your financial interest in a gentleman's club. I'm not sure exactly, but you do kind of have that bad boy reputation about you. And that, I don't know, you wear that and you have a good swagger with it. So it seems to work for you. But is that something that you have always embraced, or did you just roll with it?
I mean, through the racing years, I mean, it was, how do you say this? I mean, you raced hard, you partied hard, you chased girls hard, and if you wanted to fight in pits, you fought. So it all was part of it, and as far as owning a club, that really has nothing to do with it. But I always stood my ground. I never will change anything. It's just like when 11 wrecked me in Rockford 3 years ago. I mean, my knuckle still broke because I hit him in the helmet so hard in my fist. So
Wow.
Just never back down from a whole lot.
Well, and I know people will always know where you stand on something too. Social media has actually made that even a little bit easier to find out, because you usually do share what's on your mind on there too. So that is another endearing quality about you. Everybody knows exactly where you stand on things, and that's kind of refreshing actually in this day and age.
Well, good or bad, it's straightforward, so I wear it.
Yeah. So how is it that you ended up settling down then with Darcy? What was it there that made you decide, you know what, it's time?
Well, I mean, she's always been great with me. I mean, it's just, in time in life, it's time to settle down, and we've, we're working on things together, and so far so good. We got properties in Costa Rica and working on that, and going down next week and looking at buying some more. And who knows? It's just like, sometimes in life you find the right one. I guess she is.
That's awesome. So you mentioned Costa Rica. I know for a while there, COVID threw a wrench in your plans. Is that all back on track with what you had planned to do, or have things kind of changed a little bit, hopefully for the better?
No, I mean, it screwed the world up for a couple, 3 years, but I mean, went down about 105 acres and we're developing that. I'll know on Friday if the group I'm working with is buying my house up north. And I'm going to buy another 37 acres with a house on it. And then we're trying to buy a really big property down there with 1,000 acres and a really monster big house. So a big development. So it's all going good.
Awesome. So you're going to be like having properties on like Airbnb, or what kind of a thing are you setting up?
There's maybe some of that down the road, but just to build houses and, the development part of it, and build that and sell them, and from that way. And if they want us to put it on the Airbnb, we'll have a management company doing that too.
So what was the draw with Costa Rica? How did you even discover that and decide this is where I see our future?
In '96, when I was driving for Petty in the truck deal, a guy was part owner of the deal, lived in San Diego, and he goes, "You got to come down here." And I flew down there and picked him up at the airport. And he goes, "Oh," he goes, "some stuff's happened back in San Diego. I got to fly back. I'm gonna put you up in a motel." I'm like, "Oh, great." So I spent 2 days in a motel in San Jose. And I walked out and I said, I found a cabbie. And I said, "Is there a beach around here somewhere?" He goes, "Yeah, Hako. Like, okay. Next day, he gave me a ride to Hako. And I spent one night there, and it was beautiful. And I just told myself, I said, well, I kind of like it here. And that's before the road system was there. And I mean, this was pretty primitive, but it's turned out to be pretty cool. And I've been down there probably 25 times and really like it.
Awesome. I'm happy for you. That's good to have a kind of a plan after you're racing, really. Unless, of course, you're going to race again, which could happen.
Yeah, you never can say no. But I mean, I told Ferguson, if I have to pay him $1,000, it's all going to be in wands.
Oh, classic. That would be classic.
Reminds me of a story I heard of from Rick Eggersdorf that raced dirt late models up here. His car owner, they won a race in Canada, but if you cash the check in the States, you only got about $750.
Mm-hmm.
What they would do is they would stay a night over, cash the check at the Canadian bank, and get $1,000 in quarters, because you could use those interchangeably down here. So then they washed the car, and at his service station, he gave out change in Canadian quarters. So they still got their $1,000. They did get shorted a $250 with the exchange rate.
Oh my goodness.
Well, you're talking about Canada. I remember going to the Players 500 in Canada, in Calgary in '87. And it was like, I mean, again, didn't have $300 in my name. And we drive up there and we get there, and we were really fast. It was Butch Miller, Ted Musgrave, myself were the three guys that were fast. And this Warren and Daryl Hutchinson come out of the stand and said, "We'd like to put our name on your car." And I said, "Okay." And they said, "Well, how much?" I said, "Well, you tell me." Well, so they give me a check for $1,500. I was like, "Oh my God, we can get home." And so the race played out where I knew I had to run third. They paid, I think, $15,000 to win, 10 and 5. So, Butch and Ted are racing really hard, and I'm just kind of saving my stuff and riding around and didn't put an extra set of tires on because I couldn't afford it. And they pitted, and I ended up leading the race at like lap 4, 6 or something. And rain come over the mountain, and it rained. And I ended up winning the race. I'm thinking, oh my God, I got $1,500 check. I got $15,000 coming. Man, we're going to party and have fun. Well, when I got the payoff, when they go, "We'll send it to you." I'm like, what? I don't have the money to get home. And so I'm like, oh my God. So anyway, we stayed over an extra day. So the guys that sponsor us, they would cash their check to give me the $1,500 so we can get home. And I'll never forget, for like a week later, I keep calling up the racetrack. I go, "Hey, that check ain't showed up yet." I said, "I got a big gun, and they don't show up." I said, I can hit you from here." And finally, it was another week after that, it finally showed up and it cleared, because I didn't really want to drive back to Calgary. That was like a 48-hour drive back in the day, and that was a long ride.
Wow. What were some of the other really interesting places that you've had the opportunity to run that were very memorable for you, for your career, and just for the experience?
Oh man. Well, I've raced at 226 racetracks, so there's a lot of them. And I count the different track configurations, like Jefferson changed, Geneva changed, Homestead changed, Concord changed. So I mean, there's probably 200 tracks I've raced at throughout my career. But I don't know, there's so many. I mean, there's a bunch I don't even remember going there one time. I mean, it's like I tell people, I said, it's funny growing up in the state of Wisconsin, there's 2 tracks in the state of Wisconsin I really don't care for, in Plover and Wausau. I mean, I hate them racetracks, you run half throttle, I just in a circle. And, but I mean, I love Concord, both configurations, the oval and the tri-oval. The tri-oval with an open carburetor and a big motor, going through that tri-oval qualifying and go driving to turn 3, you're puckered up a little bit, I remember when they paved Atlanta in '97, and we tested there, and we had in the Cup car, and we had a wheel speed sensor and had like a little computer thing on the front of the steering column. I remember looking down at the speedometer going to turn 1, it was at 221. And it's like, and we didn't lift. I mean, the track had some grip, but if you hit me the quarter panel as I went by, I would have wrecked. I mean, that's how on edge it was. And I remember coming in, they said, they asked the guy how close it was. He goes, "Those plus or minus 2 miles an hour." I'm like, whew, and I mean, you were puckered. But one of the cool stories was in '76, my mom and dad took me to Daytona, and we sat in turn 4 and watched Petty and Pearson crash off of turn 4. My mom had an 8mm camera, and she stood up in a seat and she filmed it. And we never even looked at it. I remember months later, we'd come home and I put it against the wall, the bedroom door, and put a sheet down. We played it. I mean, she should have took this film for CBS. She had the whole thing perfectly. It was crazy, And I told my mom and dad that day, I said, I'm going to race there. Someday I'm going to race here. And ended up getting to be friends with Earnhardt, buying his Busch Speedway car and making an art car, and got to race there in '89. That was pretty cool, to make that promise a few years later, it was pretty special. But Daytona's pretty cool. I actually like the restrictor plate racing. I mean, it's a challenge. It's just different. A lot of people don't like it, but I don't mind being a pack. I mean, I've wrecked as bad as you can wreck and done things, but and then going to Brickyard '94, that was like, there was 80 some cars there, and we took milling stuff there that wasn't very good, and we qualified 19th, and that was pretty cool.
That Daytona story reminds, every time I was a Petty fan as a kid, and that finish, every time I see the replay and Richard sitting in the grass, I keep telling myself, this time he's going to get it started, but he never does get it started.
Well, you're talking about Richard, so
yeah.
a lot of people don't know the story, but in '92 was his last race, which was Jeff Gordon's first race. Well, who do you think he run into and caught fire?
Was it you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still have the bumper cover and I had him sign it. I took it to Daytona next year and I had him sign it. I wanted to have him sign the last thing, the King Crown, but he wouldn't do it. He just signed his name. So in '96, well, in '95, if you read the book, I signed a contract with Kleenex, and before we went to Milwaukee, went across the street to Yesteryear's bar, and most people don't realize that a banana cost me $8.5 million. But that whole story,
I had never heard that story, but that part of the book sticks out in my mind all the time. That's it's funny, but very unfortunate.
Well, I mean, I knew everybody there except that girl. I knew all our other bartenders. I was guest bartender. I was, karaoke and having a good time, and the place was packed. And all of a sudden, I'm going to the bathroom. I'm standing there, and we're talking. All of a sudden, this girl comes and starts doing this. I'll never forget Mike Joy and Buddy Baker standing on their bar stools, looking over and going, "Oh my God!" Mike Joy is cracking up. Buddy Baker goes, "Bickle, you're my hero," and everybody's laughing. Well, Monday the phone rang and said I did lewd and lascivious acts, and so that deal fell apart. And I was kind of, I sat and pulled at Charlotte in the Busch race and should have won the race. Had a flat tire, made up a lap under green, and come back to 7th. And we had, we should have won Loudon. I had his carburetor, the booster, the thing fell out of the carburetor. I mean, we really were fast that year, only running a few races, and it all fell apart because of that deal. And Bobby Hamilton said, "Hey," he says, "what do you got going for next year?" I go, "Nothing." I said, "I think I'm done." And he goes, "Well, Richard's got this new deal with Dodge, and he wants you to drive the truck for him. I put in a good word in for you." And I said, "Okay." He goes, "I'll let you know. I think he wants to talk to you at Rockingham." So we go to Rockingham, and he puts the meeting together, and I'm in Richard's motorhome, and Richard's like, "Well, we got this deal going, and I think I'd like to have you drive my truck." Like, okay. And I said, do you remember me? He goes, yeah. He goes, you're the son of a bitch back to me in Atlanta. and I knew, right. I said, we're gonna get along really good right from there on, because he laughed about it. Because I mean, the wreck had Trickle Schrader and Waltrip wrecked off of turn 4. I slowed down, and about half hour later, he come around the corner and run into me, and just destroyed both cars. But anyway, you know, to think about that. And I even told him, I said, you know, it's really funny. I said, I told him about the Daytona thing in 76. I said, well, me and my dad were big Pearson fans, and my mom was a big Petty fan. And he goes, well, I'm a big Pearson fan too, you know? So, I mean, you look back at all your life in racing and the people you meet, the things you get to do, and just to even think to be part of that, it's from nothing, is pretty cool.
That is very cool. Seems like you've had a lot of full circle moments too. I mean, where you've, like you said, you know, you were telling your parents as Petty and Pearson were wrecking that you're going to race there, and then lo and behold, you do. I mean, you've actually been able to do a lot of full circle where things come back around. Then you're driving for Richard Petty. It's just, it's something to behold. It really is.
Well, here's another great Daytona story. So in '89, Kulwicki comes to Slinger Nationals. And I mean, how do I say that? I mean, I was pretty much going to kick their butts, right? And so when we get in the heat race, and Alan's like diving up and diving down, I'm not trying to run into him. And after the race over, I walk up to Alan, I go, this isn't your house no more. This is my house, and get the hell out of my way. And he kind of looked at me, and I never knew Alan, right? He was the odd duck. He was kind of like Shearer, he didn't party, you didn't know what he was even thinking about. And when he left Wisconsin, he wasn't even a top 10 guy here. We all thought he was nuts, right? So fast forward in '89, the guy from Jim Doyle, Wisconsin Dells, through Wagner, calls me up and said, I want you to have my cup car at Charlotte. Okay. We ran Daytona art car. Well, we don't know nothing about a cup car. So we go there, and there's so many cars here that we had to park underneath the semi hauler, the gate, because there was no garage spaces. And we ended up making the race. I get in the garage stall, and who am I parked next to? Alan Kulwicki. And it's like, he wouldn't even acknowledge I was a human being. I'm like going, I think I'm in his house now. And it's like, he wouldn't speak to me. He would look at me. He wouldn't even acknowledge. So anyway, we went to Atlanta and made the race in Atlanta. And it's like, okay, so the guy from the Dells says, well, I'm going to run Daytona. Well, we took the car back to Charlotte, had an Oldsmobile body hung on the car because it was better than the Buick. And we took off. We built a lift in his trailer. We took off for Daytona, and we didn't have an engine because Carl didn't build restrictor plate motors. So, well, hopefully we can rent when we get there. Well, we got there, and there was one motor available. Mike Fryer had a motor. And he goes, well, it's not very good. It's 25 horsepower short. I'm like, well, so? He goes, well, every 7 horsepower is 1 mile an hour. Like, oh my God. So we're 3.5 miles an hour off the pace before we even get going. Well, long story short, we're horrible. I got the car so free that, anyway, here comes Alan, and I get hooked up with him in the 125, like the last 15 laps. I mean, he's picked me up 8 miles an hour. So you tell people 8 miles an hour at Daytona. Well, I had the car so free. I remember going to the corner and can look in the mirror and see, I had the car like it was a dirt car. I had smoke rolling off the right rear, and I stuck with him. And after the race, I thought I was going to die because I couldn't hold my breath any longer, as I thought I was going to just destroy the car. And he comes over and he goes, oh my God, you did such a great job. We got to get hooked in the 500. I go, there ain't no way. I'm going to die. He goes, what are you talking about? I said, I'm sideways. I'm out of control. And he's like, well, man, you did a hell of a job. Well, thank you. So when everything in 90, get my shot in North Carolina, and we got hooked with Gene Eisner Trimble Trucking. And in 92, Alan calls me up and he goes, hey, he says, can you come move some stuff for me? Sure. So I go to the shop, I move a bunch of stuff for him, truck and trailer. And next thing, he's got me up in his office and he's asking me about chassis questions. I'm like going, I really don't know a whole lot about this Cup stuff. And he's asking me questions. That's how his brain worked, I guess you want to say. He was so into everything, and he wanted to know what my thoughts were. Well, anyway, he ends up winning the championship that year, and we got to be kind of friends, and I probably went over there half a dozen times. I'll never forget walking in the shop, and Paul Andrews looked at me and go, "What in the hell is he doing here?" And Alan goes, "No, we're all good, you know." And Paul goes, "Okay, you know," and just, you know, and then what happened to him the next year is just another sad part of the racing history of my life. But it went from, you know, told him it was my house and get out of my way, and then his house, and then we got to be kind of bit friends and go through that. But to him to win that championship was amazing.
Yeah, it really was. It really was. Again, you grew up in racing in just the heyday, man. It's pretty cool.
Well, you know, like I said, me and Tom Refnick got along too well, because in '85 there, you know, he would dog time every other week and start in the front row, or his first two rows. And time he got up the front, he's long gone. And it's like, I said, "Tom, you're one of the greatest that's ever done this. Why are you doing this?" You know, and he wouldn't say nothing. And I remember we were somewhere, I think Jeffco in Georgia, and he needed a part, and I know no one had it, and I give it to him, and it took everything for me to go. So I give it to him. So the next year we're back at Madison, and he dogs time again. So I'll never forget, Bob Schmelzer ran the pit gate, and I say, "Bob, can you watch this for me?" And he goes, "Oh, this should be interesting." So Tom pulls in his open trailer, and I dumped 100 pounds of dog food in the seat. Next thing, the guy leaves, and we're all fist fighting, and it was on, you know. And I don't even know if Tommy remembers that even happened. But anyway, 2 years ago at the Turkle deal, we got off the side and we got talking about his AMC thing and how things went. And we kind of buried the hatchet and bought the door. And it's kind of cool to put that thing aside. But back on the day, me and Tom, I didn't see eye to eye. But that's all it was, you know. You
Yeah.
have to put up with it. You didn't take it, you know. And it's like, man, I mean, you win every race. You don't need to start up front.
Do you think that you and Daryl Waltrip will ever hug it out?
No. But I can't tell you what's going on right now, but there's more to the story than you even can imagine. But no. When I had him by the throat in the shop, and it wasn't for Claude Queen, I'd be in prison to this day because he wasn't going to be alive. I don't think we'll probably ever talk it out, but I think he has a guilty conscience, and yeah, there might be some cool things happening down the road.
That would be that's
that's a whole nother story.
You're a tease too, Rich. You know that? You're a big tease.
Well, I mean, we had a championship won in '97, and he wouldn't rebuild the motors for the last year race, and we blew up and lost the championship. We had 4 sponsors for me being the cup driver, and he had his 15 race deal. That's all we wanted to do. He lost everything because his ego was so big that he couldn't stand me being the driver and him being a spokesperson. He lost the truck deal. He lost the 4 cup sponsors, so he wouldn't sign them because he just couldn't stand it. I mean, I can't imagine being in that position because I'm not built that way. I'm like, if you got somebody going to hand you $35 or $40 million a year back then, I'd be going, yeah, let's go. No, he just. Well, you read the book. Yeah. When I left Richards to go to Daryl's, because Richard wouldn't have, like I said, I won 14 races in my short track car with Arrington building the motors. I said, if Arrington will build the truck motors, I'll stay. But Richard's brother was doing it, and I didn't know the whole story about Maurice getting thrown underneath the bus with the big motors and the left side tires and the right back when Rich was trying to get his 200 to win and all that stuff. And they didn't talk for a long time, and I didn't know that story. But anyway, Richard said, "Well, blood's thicker than water." I go, "Richard, I can't, you know, anything over half mile, we're not competitive. We're not even the ballpark, you know." And so Daryl wanted me to drive for him the year before. It didn't have a sponsor to come together. So when I kind of showed interest that I wasn't going to stay at Richards, Daryl goes, "Come drive for me again." And Michael's the first one that called me, Daryl's brother, and said, "My brother's going to, give it to you." And he did.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, I can't wait to see what's possibly yet to come then with that whole story.
it's kind of ironic, actually, but it just come up about a month ago, and
Oh, give us a hint.
no, no hints. It'll be pretty cool if everything comes together and I can do what I want to do with that situation. So
Okay.
it'll be good for everybody.
All right. Well, I hate to wrap it up, but we're kind of getting to the end of the time. Final thoughts for
I thought we
me?
just got started.
Well, I have a feeling we could do probably like a 8-series episode with you, Rich.
We haven't even scratched the surface yet.
We'll have to bring you back on again then. There's always more stories. But I do hope to see you at Rockford yet this year. Actually racing.
Well, I don't know about the race part. Depends if I'm gonna drive the vintage car or not, but definitely gonna be there for a few races. Just to, I'll be there for the last night for sure. I told, Sue even said she'll come up underneath the wall and we'll sit down. And I mean, it like I tell people, I said that was my, all the other racetracks you went to are racetracks. I mean, we used to race around the men's bathroom, as kids. We'd have trophy dash and 8 races and features, but at Rockford they had playgrounds and the swing sets, and not swing set, but the chain with a wheel on it. You'd spin around, and you would terrorize everybody. I mean, it was just, they did. Daryl is so far ahead of his time that Sam Bartis was too, I guess, to a point. But Daryl was probably, that's why NASCAR used a bunch of his ideas, forever, because he was
an innovator,
the greatest promoter in racing history.
Yep. I would agree with that.
And for me to do everything I did there, I mean, growing up there with my dad and doing all the things I did, and it's just sad to see it go. And I knew as soon as she died that it was going to be over. And, it's just sad for the few that want to keep it going of the family, but it is what it is.
Well, and it's tough nowadays when the racetracks were there before the houses or the buildings came. And it's like anybody who buys land near a racetrack suddenly is complaining about the racetrack. And it's like, well, you knew it was there when you bought the house.
Yeah, they don't care. There are too many liberals in this world.
And that could be a podcast episode in and of itself, too.
I usually don't call them liberals. I call them libtards. But you're talking about racetracks. So in Geneva, like I said, I won my first feature in '81, and I won the last ever race there in 2006. That was a pretty special night for me, to beat Eddie Hoffman there that night. So, I mean that place really they were going to, turn into this big deal, and nothing really happened to it till here a year or so ago, I guess. But I had Columbus 151 Speedway bought twice, and Shirley Moore, never showed up for the closing. And I spent a bunch of money on putting an 8th mile drag strip in, putting a motocross track, 4-wheel track in the back corner, expanding the racetrack, fixing the stands. I mean, I spent $15,000-$20,000 just on diagrams, and it's just sad to see that it, where that went. But it is what it is.
Are you going to put a racetrack in down in Costa Rica?
No.
Thought I'd ask.
The mountain with side by sides is a good enough racetrack.
Tell Darcy to come around. She needs to come on camera now too and say hello.
Well, she's sitting right here.
The woman who tamed Rich Bickle should probably show her face.
Tamed. I'll never be tamed.
Good to see you, Darcy.
Good to see you too. You've been making me giggle.
Well, Rich, we really appreciate you guys both.
She's been critiquing my conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Few cards in the background.
Yeah,
that's hilarious.
It's like when I try to do a video conference call, a deal for doing it, interview deal the other day for the cruise. She's in there trying to tell me how to do it as I'm trying to do it. Like, get away from me and just go.
Oh, well, you know what? You should maybe give a little blurb about your cruise here as long as we're on.
What's the farewell cruise? In January next year. Mark and M&M travel. Scott Hansen's come along. And there's another funny story. Another one of my first sponsors was Steve Marler Insurance at Kaukauna. And he just walked up to me. And I didn't know who he was. And he goes, "Yeah, you're pretty fast. I put my name in your car. Well, what do I get?" "Well, I sponsor Scott." "Okay. Well, what do I get?" And he goes, "We get all this used stuff." So I got to use body parts and wheels and tires and, but that just kept me going. And people have no clue what it took, besides great people helping all the years. Mike Carmichael and Zimmy and, oh my God, we could have a whole story in just them guys.
In the Miller days, did you possibly use more product than cash flow that came in from sponsorship?
Well, like I said, we only got $4,000 a year, but we got, we took the Q band down. It hold a little over 600 cases. And like I said, on Monday and Wednesdays when we weren't racing, I had a lot of free help at the shop. They didn't really help a whole lot. They drank all that beer though.
Yeah.
So that was, to see Bobby get hurt at Pocono and then Dick to get that deal, which was an awesome deal. But it really killed me because I was going to get the $50,000 from the Miller deal from the factory. We ran really good and won, we won races and, and that whole deal happened. And, it's just like, ugh, that took all the wind out of the sails for me until Wayne gave me a car in '89. I thought I was done.
Yep.
It is kind of cool though, in your life, especially how sometimes when those doors feel like they've closed, something else that was probably opening up another door for you that led to something else. I'm just going to go back to, we say this on a lot of our episodes, that relationships that people end up building move mountains for careers. They really do.
Well, here's another great story. So in '87, I wanted to go run Bristol in the short track deal and I needed a V6. And I called Carl and go, "Hey, I need a V6. I ain't got one." Like, well, I probably ain't gonna go then because the V8 wasn't, just at that time, the V8 thing wasn't competitive down there. And about an hour later, he calls me up and goes, "Hey, I got you a V6. He says, "But you need to take down 4 motors for Bobby Allison." "Oh, okay." With the bus. Okay. So I get down to Bristol and I got the 4 motors out for Bobby. He goes, "Well, where's my V6? I went, "Oh, I don't know." Well, it dawned on me, I knew where it was at. It was in my car, right? So Dick's leading the race. I'm running second, and I'm I'm light years faster. Before the race started, my dad, back then we didn't have headrests. I had a little strap going around my shoulder and hooked my helmet. My dad goes, "You better put that on." I go, "It's only 200 laps. I'll be good." So about lap 150, I let Dick get a straightaway ahead of me and run him down like in 4 laps. And I said on the radio, I said, "Well, with 25 to go, let me go and I'll drive by when the race." And Allison's running third. So about 26 laps to go, I had a burn in my neck. And the next lap, I was Tony Strupp. I don't know how Tony Strupp raced his whole career with his head and his shoulder like this. But when I got in the car, I had a knot from my ear to my shoulder. For a day and a half, I couldn't, nothing like that's ever happened. And I couldn't judge. I'm sure not going to take my hero trickle out trying to pass and lead when I can't see, it just didn't, so I ran second. My dad was so mad at me, for not listening to him. Of course, I always was smarter than he was, right? But so next year, the Tuesday night for the Slinger Nationals, we're in the pits and Bobby Allison sat next to me. I said, "Bobby, I got to tell you something." "What's that?" I go, "I ran second in Bristol to you the other night or last year." He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Well, you know where that V6 was?" "No." I said, "It was in my car." "That damn Carl." That's all he said. And it's just funny stuff like that you remember. And, I outran one legend and got beat by the other one. So, but
That's not a bad sandwich to be the meat in.
just stories like that. There's so many. People have no idea that, the fun and that's the best part is the people and the fun. There's been some bad times, but it all worked itself out.
For sure. I like your product placement there too. We can kind of see it.
Yeah.
There we go. Cheers to you, Rich Bickle.
I've been loyal to Miller products since the day I was born. There's no Bud Light in my world.
Oh, goodness gracious. Good stuff. We really appreciate you coming on the show. I am certain we will have you back again because I know we just scratched the surface here tonight. But this has been really fun, and you are a good storyteller. Your book is still available if folks want to buy it too. Where do they get that?
It's still out there. I mean, it's in Amazon and stuff
Amazon.
like that. But Barnard the Brickyard.
All right.
I mean, what's cool about that is I've not had one person said they didn't like it. You know, I don't know how many copies were sold, probably 7,000-8,000, but that means more to me than anything. And what's funny about the book is it was almost 4 times that big, and we got done with it, and we took the publisher company, and they said, well, you can only so many pages, so many pictures, so many words. So how do you take out all the stuff? Yeah, it took us longer to take it out and make it kind of flow than it did to write the whole thing, you know. And
Yeah.
John Close did a great job with it. And but the cool part is not one person said they didn't love it. I mean, I've had probably 100 people said they started it and they couldn't put it down. They read the whole thing without even stopping. And
I've got my copy right here.
that was the 96 version of me for Petty.
Nice. Well, are you going to be at a lot of local races then? Are you going to be down in Costa Rica? What is the
We're going to Madison Sunday.
okay.
I went to Slinger for the opener and froze our butts off, but you know, we'll probably go. I went to 5 last year. It's just hard to go and not do it, you know.
Yeah, I was going to
maybe
ask you that.
Maybe this year will maybe do a few more, but you know, just depends.
Okay. I hope to see you at a track soon.
Well, I
but,
mean, you haven't even touched a story about me winning in your husband's cars.
I try not to toot that horn too much, but
Well, hey, I like tooting that horn. You know. So anyway, we could do this for 8 hours.
I know we could. I know we could.
40.
Do you still have that car, the Toby car?
Well, we destroyed I still have Tony has another car at the shop, but we destroyed the car at Slinger.
Yeah.
That's what was really sad is that was an old left-hander and they put a clip on it. And, you know, last time I ran for championship was 89. And I said, well, I'm going to go back and run for the championship in 21. And we had it won and we got hooked that night and destroyed the car and cost us a championship. But I mean, think of that. Who's won a championship 32 years apart? You know, we had it. I mean, we changed the car that night. I told him to put a ratchet and take the spool out. And the thing was so fast. We had fast time. We finally beat Fenhouse for fast time, and the car was just a rocket. And then that year, same year, I mean, in the Nationals, we bottomed out qualifying. We started like 20th. I drove to 4th like in 30 laps. I never had a car like that in my life. And the starter solenoid stayed engaged around the battery dead under a yellow shut off. I haven't cried many times in a race car, but I did that night. I mean,
I bet.
there wasn't, if you're faster at Slinger than you're a 10th and a half faster than the field, you're amazing. That night I was a half a second faster than the field. That's unheard of. I mean, it just, I've never had a car like that in my life. And then get destroyed, you know, a few weeks later, but yeah, it's racing.
Well, I will tell you, Toby would tell you too, that usually whenever he rebuilds things, they're faster. So
yeah,
just
you
saying.
know, it's like my old car, like he's talking about the Probe. That's been a Ford and a Chevy and a Dodge and a Ford and a Chevy and a Dodge. And I mean, that car has been around since his first car we built on a jig, actually. Guy wanted a perimeter car. And I said, what do you want a perimeter car for? And that's what I want. So we built a perimeter car. And I called the guy 3 times. So when he comes picked up, he goes, well, everybody tells me I don't want a perimeter car. I said, well, I've only said it to you 10 times now. So that car went on the mezzanine and I built another car. And I don't remember why we needed a car real quick, but we took that thing off at terminal and built that car. And that car's won 3 of the 5 derbies. It's won the national. I mean, that car is the only short track car in the world that's won $1 million. And it won Rockford and won Slinger Nationals in 12 and 13. And I think that car still win today, you know, even with old technology in it. And, but it's just pretty cool that you build something and, you know, and it turns out for somebody else and you end up using it. And that car is just, I've been waiting to find body parts. So if anybody out there has a black nose and tail for a 92 to 95 Thunderbird, please let me know. Because I've been looking for years.
There's one. It's sitting in the infield at at La Crosse. It's the old Raceway Park car that was sitting out on Highway 13 in Shakopee. It's got a Thunderbird body on it. I'll go check it out on the 20th, see if Austin's willing to give up those body parts.
I got a whole body, but it's white. I want to keep. I want the black nose tail to keep the car original. I don't want to wrap it or paint it because it wouldn't be right. So that's what I'm looking for, a black nose and tail. I got a white nose and tail, but it just ain't. It's not right. You know.
I'll send you a picture.
All right. Cheers.
Well, we got a plan
Yeah,
here.
it's cool.
Well, Rich, I look forward to drinking with you sometime soon.
Well, you said Sunday.
I'll be there. All right. Thank you again for joining us. Have a great night, and we appreciate all of your stories. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rick.
All right, guys.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.